You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. Hello and welcome to the first episode of 2025. It's really great to be back, and I have a fantastic lineup of guests for you, including a number of retail CEOs that are booked in over the next few months. So if you haven't already subscribed, now is a great time to do so. It was really great to take some time off over Christmas. I did my best to switch off, but as you know, this is such an important period for retail. So I did find myself responding to journalist requests around Boxing Day and how I think Boxing Day has lost a little bit of its shine. And I also spoke to the BBC about the BRC figures that just came out, both for December and 2024 as a whole. My very abbreviated take on all of this is that consumers aren't battening down the hatches just yet, and we've already seen this with the clothing retailer Next, retailers aren't going to have much choice but to increase prices. They're grappling with heightened cost headwinds, thanks to the budget, which we've covered before on the podcast. And I think in the coming months, and this is what I said to the BBC, in the coming months, shoppers will face rising prices. There will be fewer promotions. It's just the reality of the situation. And it was interesting to see after I spoke to the journalist and the article was published, it was interesting to see Next say that they will increase prices by 1% this year. That is below the current rate of inflation, but it's still not great news for the consumer. So yeah, more on that another day. But I guess the point is that there is never a dull moment in retail. There's always something to comment on. And again, that's why we love this industry so much. But I did have a break, and it was nice to take some time off from the podcast. Probably shouldn't say that on my first episode of the year. But podcasting, I love it, but it is all consuming, and I am at it every week, bringing you guests every week, more or less. And it's a lot of work, and I think it's important to have a little bit of time off. So, yeah, it's nice to be back. I am going to be in New York next week. I know a lot of you will also be going to NRF. If you're there, please come and say hello. It would be great to hear from you, and also hear what you're enjoying about the podcast and what you might like to see more of this year. And if you're a retailer, I am going to be speaking to a couple of retailers already, but I am always looking to get retailers on the podcast. So if you want to come on and you have even just 5 or 10 minutes, I'll have my microphones with me and we can do a short impromptu interview. And I'd love to hear from you just to get your views on retail and anything that's, any burning topics that you want to get off your chest. So definitely just drop me an email or get in touch on social media. It is going to be a really crazy few days. I know, if you've been to NRF before, you know that there's not a whole lot of time to come up for air. And I'm also going to be covering the event for Forbes. So it's a busy time, but please do get in touch because I'd really, really love to hear from you. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Today, I am delighted to welcome George Robinson to the podcast. George is the managing director and owner of SoSweet. SoSweet is a specialist confectionery business based in the southwest of England. The business launched in 2014 and now trades through 16 retail stores across 4 counties in the southwest. It also has a large presence online, selling direct to consumers through its website, as well as dominating the FMCG category on TikTok. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about TikTok today. SoSweet also supplies a range of confectionery and snack products directly into hundreds of independent retail stores nationally through its direct-to-store wholesale business, SoSweet Direct. George is a very hands-on MD with a strong involvement across all functions of the business. His long-term goal is to grow SoSweet into a nationally stocked household brand. Let's welcome George to the podcast. So just to share with our listeners, George, we met a few months ago at an event that was being hosted by the Hut Group. I was being interviewed on stage, and then when we opened it up to the floor for Q&A, someone at the back of the room raised their hand and asked for my thoughts on social commerce. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but this was a totally loaded question because George knows so much more about social commerce than me. And so, George, I thought it would be great to get you on the podcast and ask you all of those same questions and hear your thoughts on TikTok and get more insights into the incredible success that you guys are having on TikTok Shop. So, really happy to have you on the podcast and looking forward to diving into our conversation.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Natalie. Thanks for having me on.
So, George, tell us a little bit more about SoSweet. I know it's a family business, but tell us a little bit more about how it got started and how your role is evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. So SoSweet was first established in 2014, and we're actually, when I say we're a family-run business, it's quite literally myself and my parents. Ironically, I was still in school when my parents started the business, but I'd very much kind of been around business. They'd run businesses all of their lives. We'd relocated from the Midlands down to North Devon, sunny North Devon, may I add, although it seems to rain more than it's sunny at the moment. But the desire was quite literally to open a couple of stores for my parents, for them to kind of semi-retire and kind of live the Devon life, if you like. My dad had very much run a retail business pretty much all of his life in a completely different industry, and we'd found ourselves kind of diversifying into confectionery. So we thought it was time to kind of add go for a standalone confectionery business, and yeah, that kind of evolved over many years. It realized that actually there's a huge opportunity there. Being in the southwest of England, we're in kind of a lot of seasonal locations as well. So very high footfall for 7 or 8 months of the year, and then quieter kind of during the winter, which meant that it was kind of work hard for half of the year and then kind of relax a little bit for the other half of the year. And really, my dad saw a real opportunity in expanding the retail stores. So from 2014 to 2020, grew it pretty much at the rate of 1 store per year to 6 stores in 2020, which I think was all him and my mum had an appetite for. I was very much involved in the business in terms of I'd work after school, I'd work Saturdays, and at this point I'd left school and had gone on to do a couple of ski seasons, completely different. Then I found myself in a position with COVID, coming into the business full time. Kind of joining the retail business that already existed, but I'd always had this desire to launch a business online. I'd always been incredibly interested in marketing, although I wasn't officially qualified in any way. And COVID presented the perfect opportunity for that. Set about building a website, launched that at the end of April in 2020, and went on to turn over £1.7 million in our first year online, which was absolutely incredible. But I was really conscious that actually we'd built a strong brand locally where we were in the southwest, and we built quite a good local customer base. And actually the customer base that we're building online was completely different. But the key to kind of the longevity and the success was not just building a customer base, but then actually retaining it. And it's quite interesting now to see quite a few of our competitors from that COVID era. Some of them actually aren't here anymore, which is quite sad to see. But it really just kind of proves how tough the landscape has become and how important retaining that customer base has been. So I suppose if we then fast forward to the present day, we've gone viral on TikTok. We've launched on TikTok Shop. We've expanded our retail business massively. So we now operate 16 of our own retail stores across 4 counties: Devon, Cornwall, Dorset and Somerset. So very much still a southwest focused business, and our HQ where I'm at now is in the small town of Bideford in North Devon. So I'm not far from the beach actually, and that's where we do all of our kind of central distribution. Our team is based from here as well.
Oh, that sounds totally idyllic, George, being based right next to the beach. I'm very jealous. Tell us more about how you're diversifying your business online. You've got TikTok, and we're going to spend more time talking about that later on in our conversation. But you've also launched a wholesale division, and I'd love to get your views on how having these different distribution points has enabled you to grow and potentially reach new customers.
we're stocked now in around 360 independent retailers across the Southwest and South Wales. So very much chasing growth on all fronts. My focus is very much on building SoSweet into a nationally recognized household brand, while also building several distribution points, kind of distribution channels around that to kind of get the brand into retail, into online channels, and kind of continue to grow our own store. So it's quite an exciting journey to be on at the moment.
It sounds it. It sounds so exciting and just incredible to see the growth that you've experienced just in such a short space of time. So was it during the pandemic? Was it literally just a case of stores were shutting and you needed to get your products online so you can continue trading? Is that what initially, like many businesses, is that what initially led you to go digital?
Yeah, I think like a lot of businesses, we didn't really know what the landscape was going to be. We weren't really too sure what was happening with COVID. We had 6 stores at the time; they were all full of stock and unable to open. And actually, quite quickly, we learned that we kind of fell under being a food retailer. Technically, we would have been able to reopen our doors quite quickly, but we just realized that the appetite for confectionery, especially a specialist confectionery store, isn't quite there, and would probably come under more fire than success, if you like, for reopening too early. So we actually set about, and we turned it around in a matter of days. We set about delivering sweets locally in the North Devon area, and that was quite literally. My sister was still kind of living at home at the time, and it was quite literally myself. Me and my mum would take orders on through Facebook Messenger during the day, and then the four of us would go out. My sister included, delivering sweets around the area all evening. I would then come back and build the website into the early hours of the morning, and we'd rinse and repeat that process for about 6 weeks until we
Wow.
were able to launch online. And actually, then we had to spend more time packing orders during the day. That it actually just made no sense to spend all this time then out on the road delivering sweets locally. So we did actually have an advantage though, in as much as stock was very much a premium then. I think similar to us, we didn't know what the landscape was going to be, and that effect kind of rippled up the supply chain as well, all the way through to large distributors, importers, etc. So particular niche of ours is American imported candy, and I know that's something that's in the news a lot now, actually, around compliance. And I may just add, we've done all the compliance work with trading standards earlier this year, so we're kind of at a good position. But we found that there was no or very little American imported stock in the UK at the start of the year, but we actually had 6 stores full to the brim of stock, and we were able to strip that out, list this online, and we kind of had a competitive edge over everyone else that didn't have stock. So it really kind of evolved from there, really.
Yeah. And then at what point did you get on TikTok? And I guess it would have been a steep learning curve going from, trading purely through physical stores to then figuring out e-commerce at a time when everyone was sort of forced to make that switch almost overnight, as you say, within a matter of
Yeah.
days. So, what led you to TikTok?
So I think a lot, like a lot of other businesses and individuals, we first kind of discovered, or I first discovered TikTok in that kind of COVID era of 2020, summer 2020. And again, it was quite literally, we'd have find time for the odd family barbecue in the lockdown sun, and my sister would make us film a dance video to post on TikTok. It was all a bit of fun. So started trying to create some content around summer 2020, but it was very much like just filming products. There was no kind of personality to the content, and actually, that's where you see a lot of businesses kind of get that content piece wrong nowadays. Is they think film it and they will watch it, when that's not necessarily always the case. So it was kind of a bit of a battle. Actually, our first pieces of content were very, very poor. We then started, I think the first piece of content that went viral was around Christmas 2020. And we had actually used a trending sound, which was a snippet from a Gavin and Stacey Christmas special. And we'd reenacted it in our warehouse. And that went viral, I think, to the tune of 80,000 views within a couple of days. And that kind of propped us up a little bit. So I think we then reached around 15,000, 20,000 followers. So we kind of started to put us on the map a little bit. But the real interesting part is it really came to life And it was around mid-January 2021. We'd had a DM on Instagram, and this was at the time where there was no kind of marketing team or anything. I was wearing every single hat, and I'd seen this Instagram DM pop up on the company Instagram, which was from someone who said, "I've just placed an order on your website. Could you please film yourselves picking and packing the order and post it on TikTok and tag me so I can show my friends?" So I thought, okay, bit of a different request, but I've got 5 minutes, so let's do it. Anyway, I didn't realize that this was going to be the overnight success of TikTok. And straight away, I mean, we filmed the video, posted it, and the next day had woke up to something like 20-25 comments from other people saying, here's my order number. I placed an order on your website. Could you please film yourself picking and packing and posting it? And we've seen like a small uplift in sales from that as well. And we thought, well, there's like 20-25 people here that want this. So straight away jumped on it and filmed a video and said, place your order, comment your order number, and we will commit to filming as many orders as we possibly can. And we just saw week on week just this incredible amount of growth. But what was really interesting is not only were we showcasing, it was almost an excuse to film content. So it kind of gave us a little bit of a niche, if you like. We knew, okay, we keep filming these videos. We can we could pump 20, 30 videos out a day and it not necessarily get boring. So it was giving us visibility from a brand level. But then what was also really interesting is every person's order was completely different. And at this point, our catalog had grown to feature, pick and mix sweets in the UK, some novelty sweets, some retro sweets, American imports. So we had, a huge range of let's say 2,000 SKUs at the time, and no two orders were the same. So we were then able to showcase products that were going into orders that might be a retro sweet that might even be, older than me as a sweet that I would never think of marketing. But actually people were then starting to comment saying, I never even knew you could still buy this. I didn't know it still existed. Oh my God, you've got American cereal. So it started to create this perfect storm of a trend of showcasing us as a brand, giving us a real niche and excuse to pump content out that was almost repetitive but different. But then while also showcasing a wide range of products and that we were selling, with the added advantage of actually people could click through to our website, check out, and it'd be delivered in a couple of days. So it was almost like the perfect storm. And we just saw week on week on week sales increase. And I think the busiest day on our website, we had something like 48,500 visitors, which at that point was at that point, I think we had like more than a month's worth of traffic in one day. And it continued to grow there. So this kind of continued then for 4 or 5 months, and we literally grew from around 20,000 followers at the start of January 2021 to around 800,000 followers by the end of June 2021. Meanwhile, driving huge amounts of traffic to our website, acquiring customers and converting them there and then. So we really built an audience, and we, then starting to get recognized, which was quite exciting, being just a Southwest-based business.
So interesting, George. It's just so fascinating how you were an early adopter to TikTok, just using the platform, because if I understand correctly, everything you're describing it all happened before the launch of TikTok Shop. So once TikTok Shop was launched, how did that change your business?
It was March/April 2022 that the food and beverage category got launched. I think beauty got launched summer 2021, and it was still very much new. So we didn't launch on TikTok Shop until April 2022, and actually it was a lot of our kind of early success can be attributed to the account manager that onboarded us at the time, a guy called Richard Thorne, who's actually is his last day at TikTok today, unfortunately. But he was very kind of proactive on onboarding us, because he was coming to us saying, you've got the biggest problem solved, in as much as you've got the audience. Now we're giving you we're giving you the integrated social commerce element to add on to that. So you don't have to drive traffic to your website to convert them. You can convert them within the app. And by the way, there's loads of subsidy available for it as well. We've got to get you on the platform. And he kind of battled with us almost for 4 or 5 months while we got our head around the platform, and actually then decided to take it seriously around October 2022. And again, it was the perfect storm. We quite literally went from turning over £3,000 or £4,000 a month in September 2022 on TikTok Shop alone to 286,000 in the month of October. So quite literally in the space of 2 weeks, just like actually investing in the platform and turning that dial up. We went from a 10 grand a quarter sales channel to £1 million a quarter, and that's what we ended up then turning over in Q4 of 2022 on TikTok Shop alone. So it was just a huge kind of, when you talk about steep learning curves, it was you've got to just dive in head first and make it work.
Yeah, yeah, if the audience is there and your buyers are there, you've got to I guess just make it happen, right? And learn as you go. How how has your business model evolved then? So I don't know if you can share numbers, but like I'm just curious about how important is TikTok for you today?
From an e-commerce perspective, TikTok Shop is incredibly important for us. It definitely makes up a large chunk of our overall e-commerce revenue, if you like. And I'm happy to share some top line figures. In 2023, we turned over £2.3 million on TikTok Shop alone as a channel. 2024, we're on track to do four, I think closer to 4.5 actually. With the Black Friday we've just had, we were 116% up on the targets that we'd put in place, which was absolutely incredible. We're paying the price on the backlog now, but we're working through it. But the nature of the platform is just, it's just so incredible. There is so much investment going into it. It's growing so quickly. Functionality is being added all of the time, and these categories are unlocking. And we're able to bring products to our audience on TikTok Shop that then we then see the ripple effect through our other channels as well. So be it through our own website, be it through our wholesale channels, through our own stores, we're able to kind of create those viral products, and then they start to, they then start to sell on other channels as well. It's kind of a well-rounded kind of structure, but overall, it makes up a large chunk of our kind of e-commerce revenue. Is very important to us as a channel.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about this halo effect that we see in retail, where if you're an online
Yeah.
retailer and you open a physical store, well, that drives brand awareness, which then maybe counterintuitively drives more online sales. So you do get that kind of that halo effect. And I just wonder if I
Yeah.
think you've kind of just answered this, but I wonder, is there a sort of reverse effect for bricks and mortar stores like yourselves using social commerce where, the success that you've experienced on TikTok is then translated into your physical stores?
Absolutely, and I think I can speak quite a lot about this because we pretty much have we've almost built the business backwards to a way that your traditional kind of D2C business would, like you just described. Businesses are born online. They might sell through a Shopify website and then start to bring some other channels on board, and then they start to consider opening physical stores. And we're seeing this trend now, especially in the fashion space. Gymshark are going after retail quite aggressively. Brands like Marnie Devoir just opening stores in the UK, flagship store in New York. Amy Smell with Odd Muse is doing the same, and it's really interesting to see this kind of actually reinvigoration, if you like, of the high streets and businesses starting to reinvest into physical retail. And I think certainly in kind of the fashion industry and those kind of bigger D2C brands that then want to grow on the high street is very much from a brand awareness perspective. They want a physical location. In the fashion industry, it might be like more of a showroom kind of style, that kind of thing. Whereas for us, we were retail, we were bricks and mortar first. We had physical stores first. Each store, stands on its own 2 feet, is profitable, and is an experience for the customer. So actually then when we started to produce content on TikTok, started to go viral on TikTok, and certainly started to sell on TikTok, actually it's all of the impacts that the kind of the impact to our offline operation, if you like, that you can't measure, and actually it is hard to measure, but we kind of see that halo effect, and certainly where we are based predominantly in the southwest, and well, we are in the southwest, but a lot of our stores are predominantly in be it kind of seaside holiday destinations, Newquay, St Ives, these popular Cornish holiday destinations. You find that a lot of people from be it the Midlands, London, Manchester, the Northeast, people are visiting these destinations on holiday and spending a week or 2 weeks a year in these locations. And actually then they're coming into our store, speaking to our staff in store, asking about products that they've seen on TikTok, asking about people that they've seen on TikTok, and we just kind of, we then know actually, okay, people know about our brand, know about our business because they've seen us online, and that's very hard to measure, but through that kind of it's the kind of immeasurable impact that it's kind of starting to become like a bit of an exponential curve. And actually, really interestingly, as we've launched our direct to store wholesale business, we've now got 4 sales reps covering the whole of the Southwest and South Wales, selling into independent retailers. So this is the convenience sector, forecourts, a little bit of speciality and attraction and leisure destinations as well. When we're going in selling into independent retailers, and we're almost pitching them the idea that if they give us the space in the store, we can deliver, be it, if it's even just a 1 meter bay, we can deliver a slice of a SoSweet store within their shop, and hopefully, the customers that are visiting them, they know who we are from TikTok. They know who we are from, we might have a store in an area not too far away. And actually this kind of halo effect of the overall branding, all of the marketing activities then start to kind of really marry together into this unstoppable force, really. It's really, really quite exciting.
That sounds super exciting, and also probably helps with the seasonality issues that you had previously. I want to ask you a little bit more about social commerce, because my take on social commerce is, of course, it's booming now, right? But it's been a little bit of a slow
Yeah,
burn. And I remember 10 years ago when X was still Twitter, but when
yeah,
Twitter launched a buy button, and we were all like, what are we going to buy on
yeah,
Twitter? And it just felt like
yes,
everybody
yeah, of
was
course.
testing it out, and it just, we weren't ready for it. Instagram was still relatively new. There were a lot of retailers pinning their hopes on social commerce, and it just, what we saw is it just didn't really transpire. And I think what's interesting is if you fast forward to today, 2024, well, this episode will go out January 2025, but we're recording in December, so we'll
Yeah,
stick with 2024.
yeah,
Instagram,
yeah,
obviously a much more established and natural platform for shoppers to go from discovery right through to purchase in just a couple of taps. We've got WhatsApp. We obviously have TikTok, as we've talked about, and Temu as well. Not a social media platform, but it's that same kind of push-based gamification that you get from TikTok. And so it feels like we're finally ready for social commerce. And I'd love to get your take on this evolution more generally and kind of where you see it going. But also, I'm just curious if you are on any other platforms other than TikTok. And if so, have you had to tailor your content strategy?
So yeah, I think there's quite a lot to unpack there. Actually, I think if we go back to the original point about when X was Twitter and Twitter launched the buy box, and I think that probably then kick-started the evolution of I suppose platforms trying to launch kind of a social commerce element. And we've obviously seen this with, Facebook has launched Facebook Marketplace many years ago, and that really serves a purpose. And I almost kind of see that as kind of trying to rival with the private seller to private buyer model that eBay, has built so well. But then Facebook shopping became a thing, Instagram shopping became a thing, and like you said, WhatsApp as well. Meta acquiring WhatsApp and trying to then introduce WhatsApp catalogs and add some B2B functionality as well. I think we've really seen a lot of platforms really give it a go. I think I could really try and I think you could really kind of liken TikTok Shop to Instagram shopping as a comparable platform from the entertainment first perspective. They're quite similar platforms, and I think that actually Instagram shopping, I don't know about you, but I've never used it. I never really see brands tagging products with native Instagram shopping listings. It kind of to me, I don't really see it as something that exists really in the world or is well utilized. Whereas TikTok Shop, I think, has done a really, really good job of kind of encapsulating the whole experience. And I think it really comes back to the point that TikTok is very much an entertainment first platform. And I think, I think kind of up until recently, anyone over the age of 25, when you mention the word TikTok to them, they think, kids creating dance videos during lockdown, etc. Whereas now it's very much a platform that is driving a lot of discovery, and not necessarily just from a brand and business perspective. I mean, how many times does someone say to you, I really want to go to this restaurant that I've seen on TikTok. I really want to visit this country or this city that I've seen on TikTok. I want to read this book. Book talk is very much a category within TikTok. And from working with them, I know that from a non-TikTok shop perspective, book talk and mum talk, these kind of groups of discovery, these little pockets of discovery groups, are being capitalized on by TikTok from a community aspect. So it's clear that discovery is happening so much on the platform, and adding in TikTok Shop is really then just capitalizing on that. It's really interesting. In a report published in May this year, TikTok stated that 61% of users discover new brands and businesses and products on the platform, which I think is really interesting. 1 in 2 TikTok users say that they went to TikTok to research or learn more about a brand or a product. And of those who were inspired to do something because of a search on TikTok, 91% of them follow through on doing the action, i.e. converting. So I think it's really, really, really interesting, because when you think of a traditional marketing funnel or an e-commerce funnel, you've got your top level discovery right the way down to conversion, and TikTok is almost delivering on every step of the funnel. You've got discovery at the very highest level, but within 30 seconds you could reach the end of that funnel and have converted and checked out on a product. And I think that's to kind of add some context to our business. I think that's really where we're winning, because sweets and confectionery is very much impulse. It's low risk, low price impulse purchasing. Our average order value on TikTok sits somewhere between £13 and £15 at the minute, which has increased quite a lot over the last couple of years. But customers don't mind parting with £10 or £15 on an impulse purchase, especially when you add in the value that and price play that TikTok kind of plays to so strongly. So you kind of then you've got product discovery happening with instant purchasing capabilities within 2 or 3 clicks in app, with a really seamless experience. It's really just creating, it's capturing every part of the funnel. It's just creating this really well-rounded e-commerce experience, rather than, I've seen there's something on Instagram. Okay, now it's a bit of a considered purchase. I've got to go and visit, click through to their website. There's a link tree to navigate, or I've got to find them on Google. Then I've got to find the right product. Then I've got to understand, if it's a piece of clothing, let's say, you've got to, you then got to think about sizing. How does it fit on a model? Whereas, if you take clothing as an example, it might be that you've seen a TikTok video with a piece of clothing you really like. Again, Amy Smale with Odd News, I don't think she's quite on TikTok Shop yet, but a lot of her product discovery and brand awareness is being driven from TikTok, purely from purely from users, and then eventually her customers seeing the products on real people, of varying varying shapes, sizes, etc. Wearing products, seeing that it fits so well, it looks great, it's great for office attire, it's great for Christmas party. Playing into this thing, into these things, and then driving conversion. And I just think that's really, really interesting, rather than all of the research that has to go around these kind of considered purchases. And actually, that plays through right to a lot of categories. I mean, if you look at Lux Collective, a very very strong pre-owned luxury reseller. Now, they're utilizing TikTok Shop, and I think I heard someone tell me the other day that they'd sold something like an £8,000. I think it was a Hermes bag through a TikTok Shop live, and they partnered with TikTok Shop. So it just goes to show that purchases of all shapes and sizes are actually being facilitated successfully through a platform like TikTok Shop.
That's super interesting. The whole live shopping aspect, I think, is really interesting as well, and kind of to see where that could go,
Yeah,
especially with those higher ticket, more considered purchases. But I mean, so much of what you said is really resonated, and it's reminded me of something that the head of retail at Meta, I've heard him say several times, which is that people used to find products, and now products are finding people. And I think
yes,
Instagram, I mean, I've never clicked through or tapped through to buy anything, but it's certainly been the place of discovery for me. It's shortened that funnel. And I think what social commerce
yeah,
generally is doing, and Instagram and TikTok in particular, as you compared them so well, I think they're both really bridging that gap, marrying up the convenience and that frictionless experience that we've come to expect when shopping online, but they're marrying that with the discovery aspect that shopping online today is still very one dimensional. It's transactional, and I think social commerce
yeah.
really kind of fills that gap nicely. And one more comment based on some of the things that you've just highlighted. I thought the point about TikTok being entertainment first is a really important one. And I heard also the head of retail, this time at TikTok, the head of retail speak at a conference earlier this year. And he made the point exactly that it's entertainment first, that people open TikTok to watch it. It's a
Yeah.
social media platform, but that people are opening it to watch it, to be entertained. And so you have that captive audience, and it's just about, monetizing it. So really, really interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
Just briefly, I'd love to get your thoughts, because we sort of segued into this naturally, but I'd love to get your thoughts on e-commerce more generally now, and kind of how you see it evolving. Because I think what we've seen is there's been a real proliferation of choice online. We've talked a lot about social commerce, but also things like direct to consumer, marketplaces. We just touched on live shopping, quick commerce. There's a lot of different ways that you can shop online today. And I don't know. Do you think that the that customer needs are currently being met today, or do you think there are opportunities for the industry to make things a little bit better and enhance the customer experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll start to see a real shift over the next few years in the kind of e-commerce and D2C commerce as we know it. It's like you said, it's been very transactional to date. Typically website driven, a familiar checkout process, a familiar kind of shipping process, and that's kind of all we've known. And that's evolved a little bit over the years, and things have got better. The introduction of kind of 3D modeling of products on Shopify websites, and better sizing charts and things like that kind of make that online experience a little bit better. The introduction of subscriptions and things like this has really played a part. But I actually think there's going to be a real shift in kind of e-commerce and D2C as we know it. And I think a real shift to marketplaces as well. You mentioned Temu earlier. I know that I was actually on a call with Temu earlier this morning. It's a platform that we're onboarding with quite quickly as a selected local seller. They've supposedly got huge demand in the UK, but nowhere near enough supply. And a lot of supply is currently coming from China because it's the Temu originates from China, and that's where a lot of their suppliers are. But there's a real push to build the local sellers. It's not even a category because there's categories within them, but like you build the local sellers market within the UK where customers can get products shipped within 5 to 7 days, which we know is actually quite a slow shipping time when it comes to e-commerce in the UK. So I think there's going to be a real shift towards marketplaces, and we're seeing this with kind of bigger brands and retailers as well. You've got the introduction of or the evolution, if you like, of B&Q Marketplace, Debenhams, John Lewis, etc., opening up, Tesco, opening up to other brands joining the platform, obviously, for a transactional fee, which I think is really interesting because then you got the ability to kind of club together a lot of products and almost do a bit of as you would go down the high street and go shopping with multiple different brands and retailers across lots of different categories. There's the ability to do that within one marketplace. And again, going back to Temu, I know that they've got particular incentives around products being bundled together, even though they might be shipped from different retailers. Encouraging users to do a real shop across different categories and kind of clubbing them together into one basket. So I think there's going to be a real shift. I think it's really interesting as well seeing the the kind of shift and uptake back towards the high street as well. Like we were saying earlier, D2C brands that were traditionally D2C built, testing the high street and bricks and mortar retail more from a brand and experiential marketing perspective. I know this is something you spoke quite a lot about at the talk that we met at. The kind of shift to experiential, the kind of experience when it comes to e-com and bringing that offline. I think that's really interesting, seeing how that's going to play out, certainly for these bigger brands that are opening brick and mortar retail as well, how they can kind of bridge the gap between the two, specifically like the Gymsharks of the world, that their customer base is predominantly online, and there's kind of so much around data capture online, and then whether it's email marketing, driving people towards an app, driving people towards other sales channels, then kind of how that gets married up with that in-person experience to kind of make a kind of cohesive shopping experience for a brand wherever you're shopping with them, whether it be on a marketplace, on their own website, or in their store. So yeah, I think in summary, I think there's going to be a real shift. I think there's going to be a real uptake in marketplaces and live shopping as well. I know that live shopping is absolutely booming in China, and TikTok Shop. Again, I was speaking with someone at TikTok. I was at their offices on Wednesday for a merchant roundtable, and someone said to me that TikTok Shop is the third biggest shopping platform in China, and it didn't exist 5 or 6 years ago. So they've experienced this huge growth, and a lot of it is being driven by live shopping. And again, it's really kind of certainly in the UK, it's reinventing that QVC tele shopping that we all know, but bringing it to people on platforms that they're natively on from an entertainment perspective. Like you said, people are opening TikTok to watch videos they don't necessarily want to be sold to, but if they see something they like and they've got the ability to purchase it there and then, or have someone, explain, they can enter a live shopping room where, they might not be fully decided on a product, but then actually the live shopping host is, they're doing their job, they're selling the product, but you're able to comment and engage with the live host, oh, do you have it in blue? Or, how does it fit? Or can I return it? What flavors do you have? All of these questions can be answered in real time, and actually driving purchases there and then on a mass basis. So I think it's really, really interesting. I think there's a lot more to come in terms of social commerce in the UK. I think TikTok Shop is very much still at grassroots level. I know, for us as a business, we're investing heavily in the platform, from a resource perspective, from a product perspective. I know that, going up the supply chain to right the way up to a manufacturer level, and brands that sit much big, brands that are much, much bigger than us in the industry are having these conversations with us about how, they're huge businesses, but they can't mobilize, or they're struggling to mobilize on TikTok. How can they utilize merchants like ourselves to get their products, on these marketplaces? So I think there's a long way to go.
Yeah, and actually that leads me nicely to my final question. I mean, we could be here for hours because it's just so fascinating because,
Yeah,
it's
of
moving so
course.
quickly, and I think there's a lot of retailers and brands that listen to the podcast that they might be a bit bigger than you in terms of their store estate, might be a little bit harder to make those changes and to take those risks as well of, adopting new channels and I guess adopting a different persona and letting go a little bit on social media. I mean, there's a lot, I guess, a lot that goes into it. So, what advice do you have for other retailers and brands that are looking to capitalize on social commerce?
I think my first piece of advice is quite broad, but it would you've got to start with you've just got to get involved in some capacity, mobilize on these platforms, put teams or resources in place, and then I think don't be scared. It's like you're saying with bigger brands, there is we're starting to experience this a little bit now as we start to grow. There are there's I suppose, a bit of internal red tape when it comes to marketing, what is allowed, what's not allowed, following brand guidelines, etc. And actually there's, levels of sign off procedure, layers of sign off that needs to happen for content. And actually TikTok being an entertainment first platform and content led, it's hard to keep up with the level of content needed from the platform when it needs to be signed off at every level. And I've kind of been privy to some of these conversations. How do we how do bigger brands actually keep up when there's, they might have some internal rules in place, but actually it's that kind of letting go of a little bit of kind of control when it comes to not having to sign off every piece of affiliate content, and actually letting affiliates do their job when it comes to creating content around products and things, and actually I suppose not being scared of a little bit of not backlash, but not being scared of what's the word? Maybe a little bit of negative content that may come. I mean, if you look at like Audi or Ryanair's marketing team, they do an absolutely fantastic job, and actually, they share content that may be deemed as controversial, or they engage with users in a way that could be deemed as controversial. But actually, if anything, it just creates more virality for them. I'm not saying that's necessarily the best approach, but actually letting content play out on a platform that is content driven, I think is the absolute kind of key. There's obviously deeper pieces around live shopping and affiliates and the actual pieces of content, but it's a real opportunity to engage with your core customer base and acquire new customers. Letting customers have a voice, being able to reply to, they can comment on videos. You can reply to, you can reply to users' comments with another video. Creating another piece of content to continue the conversation going. Like I said, with live shopping, it's almost like being in a room with 100, 200 people, and them asking you 1,000,001 questions around the product or around your brand, and you actually being able to answer them there and then, and almost give everyone that individual service, if you like, that wouldn't be possible in a store environment. If 200 people walked into your store and there's one of you and they ask 1,000,001 questions, it's just not possible. When it's kind of on a comment flow and people are reacting and other people are answering other people's questions, it really creates a sense of community around a brand. So I think, certainly when it's bigger brands with maybe some reservations about the platform, I think brands that don't get involved now or very soon, I think are really quickly going to start to miss out. And I think a lot of the key to our success on the platform is that we were very much an early mover. We were one of the first sweet brands on the platform, and we've really lent into it over the years. Every piece of new functionality, every event that we can get involved with, every new creator, every new piece of content, every trend, we try and we try our absolute best to keep up with, to keep us at the top of that level. And it's one of the reasons that we dominate the food and beverage category with a number one sweet seller on the platform, and we consistently rank top 5, top 10 in the overall FMCG category, in some cases sitting next to and sometimes above some really well-known big brands, which is really, really exciting for a business that was born out of North Devon 10 years ago and didn't have an online presence 4 years ago. So I think just absolutely just getting involved, in some cases just building the plane while you're flying it, learning it as you go, because there's no, otherwise it's, by the time something's been signed off and everyone's happy, it's that trend's over.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is authenticity, community,
Yeah.
test and
Yeah.
learn, iterate, evolve,
Yeah.
and probably most of all, just get started.
Absolutely. And I was on a panel last year with one of the directors of marketing at TikTok, and he asked me, when does that test and learn phase on TikTok end? And I said it never ends. What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow, and we're consistently if we suddenly shifted back to content that was picking people's orders and filming us packing it, I'm sure that probably there would be some uptake, I'm sure, and people from our original audience maybe would remember that, but that's not our style of content anymore. It's really evolved, and we've got a much wider business to showcase. So you've just got to really kind of go with the times and not be scared to adopt these new routes to your customers.
George, it's been so great to catch up and hear your story. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you ever so much for your time, Natalie. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.